Okay, Kahal Kadosh. Good morning, everybody. Beruchim Abaim to everyone. Today, Tuesday, the 24th day of Tevet, corresponding to the 28th of December. Today's class, graciously sponsored Le'ilui Nishmat, Abraham Alberto Ben Sara Cohen, Alberto Fascha Terwil from Mexico City, by his children, as well as by the Shama family, Le'ilui Nishmat, our dear member and friend, Mr. Mozi Shama, Moshe Ben Salha, Alav Shalom, that today is the year of his passing, and by Mr. Albert Aides, Le'ilui Nishmat, his beloved mother, Nisha Bat Fortune, Aliyah Shalom, Iratzon, that to the words of Torah, all the Neshamot have an Aliyah in Gan Eden. Amen.
Amen.
I will give you a preemptive statement before I begin the class. Some of the topics that I'm going to be discussing today are very beautiful, very happy, very friendly, but some of the topics are a bit challenging. So I'm giving you the heads up, just in case. Put on the seatbelt, put on the bulletproof vest, enjoy the breakfast, do the listening, and I'm going to do the talking. And hopefully this will take care of today's Gemara. So the Gemara will give us a few situations to be proactive and a few situations to take a step back. So what are the things that a person should truly get close to? One of them, the Gemara says, Haba'at Shalom. Try to make peace with people. It's a beautiful pasuk from the book of Tehillim that says, Bakesh Shalom Belotfehu. Look for the peace and chase after the peace. Sometimes, in the case, God forbid, of a mahloket or an argument, sometimes a person, the victim, may say, why should I apologize to the person? He is the one, or she is the one. In marriage, this is unfortunate situations that occasionally could happen, or between business partners, or between family members. So the Gemara says, one of the things that you should do in your life is better to be the one who takes the first step to make shalom. Not only that, we can add one more word that I don't see in the Gemara of today, which is the concept of a person being mevater. Mevater means to be easygoing, let it go. Don't hold a grudge, because at the end of the day, internal drama affects the life of the person. Like it or not, how many times people have a trauma or unfinished business, even between parents and children. Like a father said to me yesterday, Rabbi, I don't want my son to go through the same challenges I went through school when I was a child. Whatever those challenges he may have gone while being in school, different methods of discipline or activating discipline, and this is something very powerful that the Gemara tells us. Another concept the Gemara will tell us is stay away from being a cosigner for people. Arev. Arev means, let's say that you want to get a loan, right, from a bank, or to lease a car. And sometimes, out of the goodness of your heart, what are you going to do? You're going to sign the lease of the car on behalf of this person. And this is very common things, I think, that parents do for their children. I recall myself that I've done it in the past. But sometimes you do it for friends. And sometimes friends are not careful. And guess what? They get a ticket, it goes on your record. True. They don't pay a fine, they suspend your license. So the Gemara says, don't run to become a cosigner. I'm not telling you not to do it, but you know what I'm going to tell you? Protect yourself. Protect yourself. Sometimes you cannot say no. If it's your son, for example, or your daughter, okay, your brother, etc. But when it's out of the circle of close family members, which that by itself could become a challenge, the Gemara says, להתרחק. You sleep better at night. Right? You have the issue of repeat. Excellent point. Excellent point. When you co-sign for someone, there is credit card, mortgages, there is a card required, etc. Another concept the Gemara writes, and it says, going back to the concept of shalom. Bakesh shalom berot fehu. Look for peace and chase the peace. Not chase the peace away. Yani run after the peace. This is what the Mishnah writes in Pirkei Avot. Ohev shalom, berodef shalom. Ohev shalom means loves peace. Do you know someone who doesn't love peace besides the Arabs and Israel? Do you know any person who doesn't love peace? I hope that we don't know anyone who fits that criteria. Because the minimum that a person should try is to do. But the question is, who chases after peace? Like we discussed a while back about a Harona Kohen, that the moment that he heard that there was a little feud between two people, or God forbid, husband and wife were planning to get divorced, what he will do? He will go to the husband, he will talk to the wife, and he will try to make peace between each other, and that's how people remain married in his time. So the Gemara brings an interesting pasuk, and it says, Rodev tzedakah b'chesed. A person that chases after charity and kindness. Imsa haim tzedakah bechavod. He will find life, charity, and honor in olam haba. Interesting concept that the Gemara brings down. Another concept the Gemara says, stay away from making promises. Don't promise. Even though in certain halachic situations, a promise that was made, it can be nullified. That's called hatarat nedarim. That's what we do, according to our tradition, 3 times a year. After Tisha B'Av, before Rosh Hashanah, and before Yom Kippur. By the way, in Israel, they do it every Friday. Sure. From a Kabbalistic perspective, you should do it every Friday. The question is, Friday morning or Friday afternoon? Why? Because you don't want to enter the Shabbat without keeping all the promises that you may have said throughout the week. In our synagogue, there is a group of people who do this every Friday morning. I personally don't do it because it's not our tradition, but there are pious people who do the Hatarat Nedarim on the morning of Friday. And there is such a thing written in the holy books. Why? Because a person that makes a promise and the person does not keep that promise, besides that indirectly the person is lying because he made a promise and is not keeping it, but also there is another concept that because promises usually are made verbally, so automatically it has the power of blocking our prayers. Why? Because prayers are made verbally. So the same mouth that made a promise is the same mouth that is praying. So you want to get an approval. You know what they do? They check your file in Shammai. Is this person has any pending promise that he or she made? Now, if you have a promise, you have 2 options. Either keep the promise or nullify the promise. The way to nullify the promise is that you summon a bedin. It's not too complicated, and the hacham of the bedin will look and listen. Oh, Rabbi, Shalom Aleichem. I spoke about bedin and the dayan came. I should have asked for Mashiach. God, please send Mashiach on a Tuesday morning, sunny, Florida day, 74 degrees. Baruch haba. For those who don't know, the holy rabbi sitting next to me, Let me turn the camera. Rabbi, say hello to the audience watching live.
Shalom Aleichem.
Aleichem Shulam. Rabbi, dear friend of mine, Dayan David Grossman, which some of you may have met in the past. He is the director of the Sephardic Halacha Center out of Lakewood, New Jersey, which is a branch of the Beis Avad, which is a Bedin, one of the most reputable Batya Dinim in the city of Lakewood, New Jersey, that provides services to the Jewish world, especially to the English-speaking world, worldwide, all matters of halachic documentation, heter iska, Shabbat contracts, inheritance, prosbol. And recently, I believe, they started to get involved by rabbinical request in the fields of executing divorces. After all efforts has been exhausted, that is a new branch of the Beis Avad Sephardic Halacha Center. I'll be happy if you only call the rabbi for business matters and nothing else.
Inshallah.
All right? Be'ezat Hashem. But many times, you have situations, and I'm telling you this openly, which everything is ashkaha peratit. I'm talking about promises and nullifying promises and pursuing the peace, that the rabbi is my go-to colleague that I refer to people and myself contact the rabbi often throughout the year with specific challenging financial, monetary type of questions. Some of them, remember, Rabbi, the Amazon guy who sells pet food that is Hames in Pesach. I know, Hacham, you're a Hacham Bashi. You're a Harona Kohen. That's why your name is in the Gemara mentioned. That's why you know it all. But, yeah, exactly. Mabisir, but we need to find a way. What are you going to tell Amazon now? Don't sell my products, cancel my account. It took you 3 years to build the account. So you have to find between the parameters of halacha ways to perhaps free sell or relinquish or not benefiting from the profit. Or for example, a person has a store and there is an issue with Shabbat and holidays. You have to find, how to solve the person's problem. Obviously, we don't encourage people to do any of these things, but sometimes people don't know better when they do it, and they come to you after somebody asks them, how do you do selling Hames in Pesach? Oh, and they tell you, I never thought of it. I thought it was for pets, and because it's for pets, there is no need. Actually, yes, because it's your property. Yes, it's your profit. And Hames in Pesach, you cannot see it if it's in a domain. You cannot eat it, and you cannot derive benefit from it.
Or own it. Let me jump in.
Yes, Rabbi.
Even if people don't say on chametz, on Pesach I won't deal with it at all, right? But a week before Pesach, you sent a shipment out, and then after Pesach, you get it back. It's defective materials. What happens when you sell defective materials? It reverts back to your ownership, limafrea. Retroactively. So when you get that back, it ends up that you owned chametz on Pesach, even though then it was shipped out already. When it returns after Pesach, you could retroactively have owned the chametz during Pesach.
So kosher mishpat is the volume of the code of Jewish law, which is the most perhaps challenging and intricate, especially when you have today all kinds of things, starting with a cryptocurrency, right, Rabbi? You lend money with cryptocurrency. Bitcoin, when it was 8,000, now it jumped to 64,000, and now it went down to 50,000. How do you get paid? How do you pay? And this is only a free sample. Or, like we said before the rabbi came in, co-signing for a loan, right? Credit cards, mortgages, etc. So it's not so simple. Like we say, kosher money. Kosher money is not only that a person earned the money in a proper kosher way, but even, has v'shalom, a person unintentionally, out of the goodness of the heart, thinking that they are doing a favor to someone, they are doing a favor to someone, But unfortunately, automatically, it activates a whole issue of repeat. And this is similar to what the Gemara is talking about, the concept of making promises. One of the things that we learn in the topic of Hatarat Nedarim is the concept of nidui. Nidui literally means, God forbid, that a person's prayers are blocked for 40 days. And that's why one of the Hatarot that we do is around the 40-day mark before Rosh Hashanah and before Yom Kippur. So this way, if God forbid, a person may have made a promise and that promise was not kept, that concept should not block our prayers of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Imagine yourself for a moment, before I give the mic over to the rabbi, because when he speaks, I learn a lot of things. By the way, I'm not sure if he knows this, but his in-laws, his parents-in-law, made one of my Shiv'a Berachot in Miami Beach back in 1987. So now you know how many years I'm married. You like it?
Beautiful.
Okay, 1987, his in-laws, Mr. Gershon, Alav Shalom, and Amavdil, his wife, they made Shiv'a Berachot, not for me, because of my wife. They loved my wife. They knew my wife, I think, from the early days, right? Temple Moses, 71st Street. So the kids were friends, and they had a great, great relationship. So, Baruch Hashem, I remember the address, 2801 Prairie Avenue, right?
Yeah.
I think they moved from there many years back, right?
North Bay Road, they were there.
Yeah. Okay, Baruch Hashem.
That's when I came into the family.
Okay, you came after Shiv'a Berachot. Beautiful. So he opened the door for you. Anyways, so going back
I was
to
11 years old by Yoshev Barachot.
okay, but you were already in the drawing board from Shammai, right? Anyways, mamash hashgacha peratit, a divine providence, our Kadosh Baruch Hu causes situations and scenarios that somehow we don't even know, and then suddenly you see the picture clear in front. So before I give the mic over to the rabbi, let's wrap this up with the Hatarat Nedarim. So if you look in one of the introductory prayers to the Hatarot that we do before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, is exactly this concept. Imagine yourself for a moment, you came to the synagogue, you came to Selihot every day. Sephardic do full version, right? 30 days plus 10. You came to Rosh Hashanah, you came Kippur, you did beautiful prayers, you bought a couple of aliyot, everybody's so happy, but then suddenly you're asking, but what's going on? I did so many things, and it goes to voicemails. You know what the Zohar Kadosh says? Maybe your tefillot are put on hold, they're blocked, because you failed to keep the promise that you made. So that's why we do this Hatarot specifically 40 days before Rosh Hashanah, 40 days before Kippur. By doing this prayer, we pave the way for our prayers to be delivered in the high holidays. But two things you should always do.
Rabbi is supposed to do every day.
True. But I will tell you something easier to do, perhaps. Beli neder. Don't promise. Rule number one in promises, don't promise. You try your best. Beli neder, primero Dios, the way they say in Mexico, right? God willing, okay? Whatever you do, but don't promise. Train yourself to say Beli neder. Beli neder, without a promise. Now, what happens if you made a promise? Let's say that you have an issue with a client, with a customer, payment, the bill, invoice, whatever it may be, and you say to the fellow, I promise you that by tomorrow, 5 o'clock, the money will be in your account. 5 o'clock came, and the money is not there. That's an issue. You can say, no, I meant 5 o'clock Pacific time. Okay, exactly. 3 hours later. That's not the idea. So first of all, don't make promises. If you made a promise, And I will clarify one more thing, which I think is important, that when we do these hatarot, collective hatarot in the synagogue, they don't clear the way when you know for a fact that you have an unkept promise. We do a generic hatara just in case. Just in case I may have said something that can constitute a promise and I really didn't keep it. That case, I'm covered. But if you know for a fact that you made a promise and that promise was not kept, you have to let the rabbi know. The rabbi will summon a bedin in the synagogue, which is very easy to do for hatara. You will tell the rabbi what is the promise that you're trying to nullify or to cancel, and the rabbi will listen and will find something called in Jewish law a petach. A petach means an opening to somehow reverse this promise that a person made, and that's the way we handle the situation. But as I said before, one of the things the Gemara mentioned was don't promise. Don't promise, because the Gemara writes further and it says, Hanoder ke'ilu bana bama. A person that makes a promise is like if he built an altar to offer a sacrifice to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You know what this Gemara is telling us? Haki balash doesn't exist. You know what haki balash means? Talk is cheap. Yani I say whatever I want. There is no such a thing. Haki means talking. Balash, yani no money involved. Balash. Gratis. Okay? So the Gemara says, no. Your word is your DNA. Your word is your neshama. What are you going to take your words, make a promise, make him believe on something that is not true? That's why the Gemara is so powerful in this particular manner. There is much more things to say, but since the great rabbi will be heading back to Lakewood in a few hours, we're going to seize the opportunity to listening to fascinating, perhaps, Hosher Mishpat questions. Rabbi, I know you have many in your experience. Share with us some juicy type of questions. Right, I think one that we received yesterday. Remember, somebody that works for a company and he got customers through a computerized program and he wants to take away the customers because he made the phone calls. I think that's an interesting one since everybody is in the world of business. Me too. 1 second, please. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking for today. We let the great rabbi share with us some beautiful insight. Rabbi, when you need to leave, I know you have to catch a flight. Feel free to do so. I'll continue if necessary. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Rabbi. It's always a nachat ruach to be here to see the involvement of the kahal. And the kahal, the rabbi, also should be zocher to many, many long years together, Bezrat Hashem, of limud Torah, tefillah, and all the wonderful, beautiful mitzvot that go on in this beautiful, I would call it, maybe, I've been around the block, could be the most beautiful synagogue in America or maybe even the world. The way you get to see Neflaot HaBorei, while you're praying to Hashem, thank you Hashem, for the beautiful trees and the beautiful atmosphere. It's something very special. I want to start a little bit with the inyan of neder, very interesting halacha, which here in the synagogue may not be as relevant, but when we think of a neder, we think of a person saying, I promise. How about if he doesn't say, I promise, but he thinks, makes a commitment in his mind? Does that have any bearing? Just like a case in point, the person is person's praying, and he's approached by somebody who's raising funds for his family or for whatever it is, an ani, and he's in the middle of putting away his talit and his tefillin, and he thinks, let me give $50 to this person down and out. By the time he turns around, the guy's gone.
He's gone.
You can't find him. You don't see him. So something to be here that in the synagogue here, I think the minhag is that the rabbi goes around after for all the people who are raising funds at one shot. So it's maybe less relevant, but by us in New Jersey, during one tefillah we can have 30, 40 individuals who are in need, and there's different times they can come in the middle of the Kriyat Shema. It's a halachic issue that while you say Kriyat Shema, not to osek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. One does not have to give the ani if he's in the middle of the Birkat Kriyat Shema or Shema, but before the Shema or after Shmoneh Esrei, after the Amidah, a person does give tzedakah, and many times by the time you're able to, and that's a very important point when it comes to tzedakah. The pasuk says, "Kol nediv lev, nediv libo," that even a person makes a commitment in his heart, it becomes a neder when we're talking about tzedakah. When it comes to, like in the Bet HaMikdash, it said that anybody who had a pledge in his heart, he pledges, I will give this to the synagogue, or let's say there's an appeal in the synagogue and a person doesn't say it, but he just thinks, let me give $1.5 million for this project or whatever it is.
Amen.
But when a person commits in his heart, there also, and it's called when we talk about tzedakah, not in a different neder. Like if I say a neder, person won't eat fruits, you won't eat apples today. So that does not work unless you say it. It has to be motzei sifatecha tishmor. You have to watch what comes out of your mouth. But when it comes to pledging for the Bet HaMikdash or for tzedakah, and even a pledge that's in the mind. Even if it's not spoken, a person would have to. So a person, when he thinks these things, you train yourself to think, I will try to give this ani $1 or $50, but you don't think I will, because then it could be, like the rabbi was saying, it could be an element of neder. Now, when we talk a bit about tzedakah, it's actually interesting, does anybody know how much tzedakah does a person have to give? How much tzedakah does a person have to give on a annual basis? Does anybody know the amount?
10%.
10%.
10 and 20.
Right. So 10 is the minimum, let's say, and 20 is the maximum. So that's right. Very good. So what's interesting to note is when it says aser ta'aser in the Torah, what are we talking about? What is the Torah referring to? What type of aser? Aser ta'aser of what? What is of produce?
Of the final income.
Right, so the Tosafot and Ta'anit, which is just recently in the Fiomi, brings us Sifri, which says that just like one has to give Maaser of produce, also he must give on Pragmatia, which is business, profits, cash, money. But that's not necessarily in the Torah as that a person needs to give 10%. What it says in the Torah of how much tzedakah a person has to give, it says naton titen. Give again. Even if a person comes every day, give a minimum. So the halacha is that really with so we have to differentiate the halacha with tzedakah, which there's another two aspects in the halacha of tzedakah, which is it says lo tikpotz et yadcha, lo ta'ametz es levavecha. Do not harden your heart when asked for funds. Don't close your fist. Naton titen. So really, that's all it says. It doesn't say an amount in the Torah. There's a remez to it, like we were saying, aser ta'aser, which can be transferred over to money as well. Maaser ksafim. But it says by Yaakov said, "V'chol asher titen li, aser ta'asrenu lach." I will give, but It's not. It doesn't say clearly in the Torah that you must give 10%. It's derived and it's not a clear Doraita. What is Doraita is you must give. What must you give? So the pasuk says, how much do you have to give? De machsoro asher yechsar lo. De machsoro asher yechsar lo, which means you must give what the ani is missing. A person comes to you, you need to give. He's in need. You have to fill his need. So that's a little bit more ambiguous. How much is the need, and how much does he? Person could be in need of surgery, lo aleinu, and he needs it right away, and he doesn't have insurance, and he's coming from Israel, whatever it is. He needs to live. He needs $1 million tomorrow. Do you have an obligation? That's more than your maaser. It's more than 10% of your income. You have to give. So there's two. We have to always remember. There's two levels of tzedakah. There's tzedakah and maaser. Tzedakah is a doraita. It's it's clearly in the Torah. You must give de machsoro, which could be a lot more than maaser, and it could be also much less than maaser, because again, the difference between tzedakah and maaser is that tzedakah is more of a reactive mitzvah. Means a person sits at home, doesn't leave his house, and he doesn't know about anybody's needs, and he minds his own business. He really can get away with the halacha is even like a few dollars a year. If no one asks you, there's no tzedakah. So the higher level of tzedakah, which is doraita, is really it's reactive. If somebody's in need, you must give. How much must you give? De machsoro asher yechsar lo, whatever the ani is missing. Obviously, if you don't have the money and you're not able to give it, then you don't have to give it. But if a person has money and he's able to give, even if you always have to really assess where do I come in the whole picture of Klal Yisrael. Like I said, if there's a person on a desert island that needs $100,000 for a surgery, and you're the only one he could call and he needs it right away, there could be a possibility if you have the money, that you have to write out a check for $100,000 because that's his day machsoro and he can't ask anybody else. If you have somebody who's able to go around the community or make a charity campaign or his other ways, so you have to see where you fit into his network, and you have to give that amount. But it doesn't go by 10-20%. It happens to be that the Rambam and Maran Bet Yosef say even on the mitzvah tzedakah that it's that the person who gives less than 10% is ayin ra'ah, 10% is very beautiful, and 20% is ayin tova. So there is such a concept in tzedakah as well. The halacha of maaser is more proactive. Everything that, just like by produce, I bring in income, I bring in produce, 10% goes off, and I figure out who to give it to. I have to go ahead and look for people to give it to. So if no one comes to me, I have to get rid of it. I have to give this maaser. So that's not a doraita, but it's an obligation. It's an obligation that's a minhag or the rabbanan. It's less of a level, but it's more clear and it's proactive. Everything that comes in, you need to give maaser. You're allowed to take off the expenses of your business before you calculate. And there's different ways of calculating if it's a salary or if you have a running portfolio or if you have real estate. And there's phantom income, that's the real estate went up in value. You don't necessarily have to give the value if you haven't sold it yet, because the halacha, the obligation is maaser safim. If a person buys a building for $1 million, it goes up to $1.5 million. If he didn't sell the building yet, he doesn't necessarily have to give on the profit because he didn't realize the profit. There's many different intricacies. Right, it's not liquid. Once he sells it, he's got to give the 5. The question is the 1031. If he's allowed to give the whole thing.
We can help with that.
Yes. No, but it's
Yes.
I don't want to charge us on the future. Thanks.
Wow.
right. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily go with the same laws as the government. Like
What about the 1031?
right. So 1031. Technically, a person should give maaser before he reinvests it because he made the profit. Some say if a person has a very like a very, in other words, let's say you deal with stocks, right? So every day you're making profit, profit, loss, profit, loss, profit, loss. Or a person has a grocery store or whatever, a sporting goods store. Every sale you make a profit, but you don't have to give Maser every single profit because you look at it, the business as a whole, and you do either an annual analysis of how much you made, or biannual. The Chafetz Chaim says you should do it. It says Maser. It says Shana Shana. So Chafetz Chaim says it's nice to do it twice a year. A lot of people do it once a year because that's when you do the taxes, and you have to know your withholdings, and it's not very hard to know the profits if you don't make an accounting, with your accountant. So a lot of people just do it on the fiscal year, with the accounting, which is great. But the one time where the maaser will elevate to the level of the oraita, which is, like we discussed, it's like similar to tzedakah, is when a person makes a neder. If he makes a pledge, he says, I will give X, I will give, if a person says, I will give 10% of my income, then it's a doraita because he made a neder. That's what we were learning today in the chok, that the neder is a very, very strong, stringent thing that a person should stay away from. It's like the li neder because it becomes a very, very chamur. Another way to make a neder is to do something good, to do a good deed 3 times. If a person does over and above a very special act, he does it 3 times without saying beli neder, it could become a neder, and a person would have to do hatara, and that usually is is included in the communal hatara that we do before Rosh Hashanah. But when a person practices with maaser, and he gives it, and he gives it in a certain way, or whatever a person does, when you do it 3 times, make sure to say the lineder or to continue doing it, because that really can elevate the obligation to be more of a doraita. So that's with regards to neder.
What about a nether in a dream?
I don't think another dream would have it's you're talking about another of tzedakah,
Yes.
but I don't have an exact source off the cuff, but I don't think another dream would be valid.
Okay.
It's not a real machshava.
But it
But-
goes for forgiveness in Kriyat Shema.
Well,
The Shema
before
we say,
Shema, we
right,
say,
before
yeah.
Shema,
Okay,
Be'akiz ve'bechalom.
Right. Yeah, it's a good question. A very interesting. What the poskim do talk about also is, let's say, a person forgives somebody in their heart. So usually, in order to do something to effect a transaction, you need to make a kinyan, or sometimes when you commit verbally, there's something called a mechusar amana. If a person commits to sell something at a certain price, even though he didn't make a contract, he just said, we'll go to a lawyer and I'll sell it to you for, whatever it is, I'll sell it to you for a certain price. So there, if you want to back out, a person who backs out is called mechusar amana. He's lacking trust in Hakadosh Baruch Hu because he's going back on his word. He's reneging on his commitment. So when the Gemara says that a person who does it is ein ruach chachamim nochehemenu, that the chachamim are not happy that even though you didn't make a kinyan and you didn't write a contract, you just committed verbally in business. A person is allowed to, that commitment is binding. It's not 100% binding, like that would not be able to really force the word, but there is a level of commitment that a person should keep. And the Gemara tells us in Batya that Rav Safra, a famous story, that he was in the marketplace and he was saying Kriyat Shema, and somebody approached him to buy his wares while he was saying Kriyat Shema, and he in his mind he agreed, but he didn't want to say anything because he was in the middle of Kriyat Shema. So the fellow thought that the Safra did not agree because he didn't respond. He didn't realize that he was saying Kriyat Shema, so he upped his offer. And Reb Safra still didn't respond because he was still saying Kriyat Shema. He upped the offer again and again, and he ended up offering much more than his original offer. And when Rav Safra finished Kriyat Shema, he turned to me and said, I want to sell it to you for the original price because I had committed in my heart that I was going to sell it to you for that price. And the pasuk says, what does it say? But the pasuk says, there's I think it's called a div lev, like we said. The Rishonim say that Rav Safra, when he conducted business, he only worked l'shem shamayim. He would love to sit and learn Torah as much as he can, but he needed to support his family. So he would go out and do business minimal just to support his family. So the Mordechai in the end of Kedushin says that that's why Rav Safra was makpid to hit the commitment of his heart. Like we said, when you're doing tzedakah, when you're doing something lofty, when you pledge a sheep to the Bet HaMikdash, you pledge it in your heart, it's binding, it works. So whenever Safra did business, for him it was like dealing with hektish. It was like dealing with the Bet HaMikdash because he did it l'shem shamayim only to be able to learn Torah and to pray. And so every transaction that he did was as if he was dealing with the coffers of the Bet HaMikdash, and that's why he honored the commitment of his heart, because when you deal with Kedusha, you must honor the commitment of your heart. So every business transaction, Rav Safra treated as if he was doing a transaction with Hekdesh, and he honored what he did in his heart. So it's something unique. It's something to strive for. Something to a way to conduct business. We look at it in that lens. That everything we do would be the Shem Shamayim. Any questions? I can take some questions on anywhere, business halacha or yes.
So this story is a very close person. He has a correo. He created years ago. He cannot afford it anymore. As he said, he's supporting for many years in the cabinet. Now he can no longer, there's two issues here. He can no longer pay for it, unfortunately. And what happens to that correo? I feel bad for them, and what happens to his net?
So let me paraphrase the question for the live audience. A good question. Somebody that many years ago, right, made a commitment to support, financially sponsor a kollel. His kollel. Nobody else. He is the main fellow. Baruch Hashem, beautiful. And after many years of supporting the kollel, he's going through financial challenges, and he's no longer able to support the kollel.
And it's over the 20%.
He's over the 20% maximum suggested amount of giving. So I think he has two questions that came from there. Number one, does this constitute a promise that he must continue, even though that he cannot afford it? And if he doesn't afford it, what's going to happen with the kollel? Correct? That's the question. Okay, Rabbi, I'll let you do the answer.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to answer my style.
That's a very good question. Just looking at
He's looking for a response. Yeah, he has an encyclopedia there in the cell phone.
Yeah, we have just looking up the Gemara with the story of Safra. The pasuk that I couldn't. So it's a good question. With regards to, hold on 1 second. Yeah, so it's possible that if he did not say B'li Neder, there would be some element of Neder there. Like we said, if a person does something for 3 years, he should definitely say B'li Neder. I think it would be wise just to make a Hatarat Nidarim, like the rabbi was explaining, that just to be on the safe side. It's possible that the halacha would be it's not necessary because it could be he never it was clear that what he was doing he was totally b'dat achedim. When a person has his kollel, he's not committing to give the money. He's committing to try to get others to help him.
In this case, he himself was the sponsor of the kollel. He was paying on a monthly basis for many years, right?
Yeah.
Even if he didn't say Beli Neder, once he takes upon himself you tell the Rosh Kollel, you sit down and learn and teach, and I will sponsor the monthly expenses of the kollel. If you're interested in doing such a thing with me here, I'm available after the class.
That includes a synagogue too, that goes to the kollel, and a building that's being built.
I can talk to that guy if you need me to talk to him. Sarah,
You can allocate it directly to the
Right.
kollel if necessary. Not going to write the contract if you need.
right, so definitely, probably his actions, it's like a neder,
Yeah.
like an indirect neder. So, but his questions were twofold. If he needs to make atarat nedarim, so it seems that
It would
it
definitely
would
be better.
to do it. The question is what he's going to do with the kollel. That's a whole different story. I mean, maybe the Rosh Kollel can help a bit. Maybe other people will step up to the plate.
This specific case that they had like relocated people to move into a different city, or they were there anyway looking for something to do and they put it together. Because that's a big difference.
They came from other places.
Came other places. It's
Rabbi,
tough.
especially with the bosses and everything.
Yeah.
That's a much more challenging situation because the people, I think the rabbi is trying to say that if it's a local crowd and a local kollel, everybody's local. Okay, unfortunately, you go through hard times. You pick up, you put two here, or maybe they transfer to being teachers or the working force. That will take care of it. But if you brought them from out of town, so to speak, the question is how many years ago did he brought them from out of town? If he just brought them now, obviously there should be some level of responsibility.
Right. And also, what did he tell them originally? Did he say, I'm committing to 3 years, to 1 year? Did he say I'm not? He didn't say anything.
It's definitely
at
a
all?
question that doesn't have a clear-cut answer when it's being asked on a public forum.
Right.
If this is relevant on a private forum, I'll give you the rabbi's name and number, and he can probably guide you, asking you open questions.
But it does
not public
does
questions.
bring a very important point, which is that interesting point that when a person hires, somebody, let's say for a week and it's not working out, or or he decides his son needs a job, so he wants to replace him, or whatever it is. There's a halachot, which means that, how are you allowed to fire somebody in the middle of the term, or is it at will? But the halacha does say that if a person that hires an ani, a poor man, so that could constitute a neder, because you're supporting a poor man, and therefore it would be a higher level of commitment, because you as if you're making. In other words, if I say I'll hire you for a year, there's certain ways, certain times that you could, half a year later, you can say, listen, it's not working out, and you can't be eved or whatever. There's different laws, but when you hire an ani, it's a higher level because of this concept of neder.
That's why perhaps will it help if you tell the employer, try him out, give him a trial period of a month. Will that take care of that?
Yeah, so
like a probationary.
That's a wise thing to do with any employee.
Yes.
But with an ani as well, if you hire him for a year, then you would be making a neder for a year. But if you hire him for a month or 2 months, so then you're limiting your neder to the trial period, and that's 100% okay.
Okay, we say to the rabbi Nesiato, 1 second please. I got to shut off because they need the channel. We continue with a question after this. Do you mind? Sure. Thank you, Habibi. I know, you never say no. For the Spanish audience in itorah.com, we'll be back in approximately half an hour. Para la audiencia de la clase de Torah en español, vamos a apagar el canal ahora, volvemos en media hora para que itorah.com siga con su transmisión de todos los días de acuerdo al schedule que tienen preestablecido. Que tengan todo